Life is strength. This is not to be contested. It seems logical enough. You live, you affect your world. But is it what you need? You are different inside. These words always stuck with me, even if they were spoken by one of the greatest video game villains of all time, because it sums up the shortfalls in much of current game design. I've never liked the so-called three-pillar system. It was lacking and short-sighted. Other games had similar ideas, but took the concept further and made for much more fulfilling characters, which led to much more enjoyable adventures. Time to fix the three-pillar system to make player choice mean something. At least more than, how will I try and hurt someone next turn? For those unfamiliar with the term three pillars of gaming, they represent combat, diplomacy, and exploration. The three pillars are not equal. It's been jokingly stated that the actual three pillars are melee combat, ranged combat, and magical combat. Exploration has long gotten the short end of the stick. I recently did an entire video on that not too far back. Diplomacy is only viable for certain characters. The party tends to only have one mouth. Many martial types outside the paladin use charisma as a dump stat. Their version of diplomacy is hitting the red light district during downtime like a sailor on shore leave. For a good time, call Pensacola Patty. Just watch out for the Everglades itch. Not that I would know. Most diplomacy checks boil down to find out who has the biggest bonus and have him make all the rolls. Meanwhile, everybody is excellent at combat, because if you aren't great at fighting, somebody will come along and tell you that your fun is wrong and the Church of the Holy +1 is the one true gamer religion. Then they tell you how to make your character so they can hurt more people. This kind of advice also tells you to stay in your character's lane, so avoid making non-stereotypical PCs. You've got a game dominated by a single pillar of play. How do you keep the game interesting so it's not Monster of the Week? What makes the players want to keep going to the latest updating of a classic adventure, only now with more tieflings and dragonborn, ripped out of Greyhawk and moved to the Remembered Realms? Make it personal. Invest their characters' backgrounds into your experience and tailor it to their goals, motivations, and aspirations. You're not stealing ideas from your players. You're creating a combined game so everybody can have their moment in the spotlight. Metaplots across entire game settings are usually bad, unless you're the one writing the metaplot for your campaign. There are two primary ways to include characters into the scope of your campaign: world building and personal goals. These are the two missing pillars of the system, and it is lacked because of them. World building is remembering who your players killed and left alive, and shaping future events around it. This can immerse them far more into a setting than just going on Adventure of the Week, where every adventure is a new town with new people. But it's far more than just a hub setting. As time progresses, people and places will change depending on the party's actions. Save a merchant, and he expands his business. Rescue the princess, you get invited to the royal wedding years later. Players like to be remembered for what they've done. Personal goals are more than just getting paid. This is where the Dungeon Master gets to go through that 19-page backstory written in iambic pentameter and find future adventure hooks. Where players get their time in the spotlight, or make old failures right. Characters with motivations are far more interesting to play than wash, rinse, repeat dungeon crawls. World building is the adaptation of your campaign as you go. Personal goals are taking your character's pasts and farming them for story branches. Old grudges, familial duties, unclaimed titles, lost loves, arranged marriages, stolen legacies, ancient scandals, mysterious tattoos, noble pretenders, and every other fantasy trope you can think of can be used by your players and stolen by you. There's a reason why we keep going back to these plot lines. It's because they're interesting. Your players want a reason to keep going. Let them decide why they are doing this. You can help them with the when, the where, and the how. From a DM's perspective, you will need blank spaces in your design to work world building into your campaign. If you have feuding crime families in your city, make contingencies for the players taking out either side. Don't railroad the players into one path. They might take a dislike to one of your NPCs. They might even fail a mission. No adventure survives contact with player characters. Not saying don't use a little Morton's fork if it furthers the overall plot, but players will catch on to a false choice if you use it too many times. The first significant thing you need to do is to set up the metaplot, so if something important needs to be done, it's the players doing it. If there's more than one thing, let them pick. If an immortal is trying to get his magic mirror simultaneously with someone invading the elven homeland, don't railroad your players and have them come back to find out where they kept all their stuff is gone, along with all their stuff. Keep the players in the foreground of your campaign. Even if they aren't going to be king or queen, they can still be knights or court mages or similar. World building can be on a micro or a macro scale. Don't get caught up in the grand scheme of your campaign if it won't affect your characters. Soderfjord might be caught up in a massive civil war, but the impact of that war isn't going to affect the players as anything more than trivia, because they're currently 1,000 miles away mucking around in Glantry. Distant news is rarely front page news, just like how we never hear anything about Suriname here in Texas. Go Lesser Kiskadis. But watch how your players react to news of the world. If anything you mention piques their interest, find a way to work it into your campaign. If players are reacting to your adventure hooks, and you notice a specific interest in the missions that they're picking, put more of those into your world. Steal from your characters' backgrounds to build things on a smaller scale. If several members of your party are of the same race, then the local town or area you're kicking things off from will need a decent population of those. Try to work them into your background so they don't dominate a story or they aren't out of place. Once, when I was younger and in a darker place, I ran a campaign in the Forgotten Realms that had a player make a drow monk in the Dale Lands, a place you do not want to be a drow. But by tweaking the city's past so that a century ago a group of Elistray worshippers warned the town of an attack by Lothdrow, as a result they were given a nearby bit of land for a reward. While still not numerous, there's enough of them and they've been around so long that they can walk down the street without drawing a second glance from natives. They weren't inserted spontaneously. They were given a history and didn't feel shoehorned into the village. World building by reacting to player decisions is not easy. It's a lot of paperwork. And if you are the type to plan your setting down to the last detail, you can easily monkey wrench your own work. Some of this can be addressed in the session 0, or the character generation session for people who speak Grognardian. If your players want a specific style, change your world to provide it. I'm not talking about rewriting maps or redesigning entire nations from the ground up. I'm talking about adding NPCs or locations that give players more agency in terms of how they want to play. If a player wants to use an obscure type weapon that's not present in the current setting, but it isn't game-breaking either, introduce a traveling merchant that happens to have a, oh my god, Makwa wheat? What the hell is that thing? Okay, this is why you do not write one of these when you're fighting depression after a car accident. Let me see. Makwa wheat is an Aztec weapon consisting of a wooden club with several embedded obsidian blades. If one of your players absolutely has to have one, have an Auslandic raider bring one back from a raid and is more than happy to sell it. This obviously doesn't work with everything. It doesn't matter if you want to have a gunslinger, as firearms are outside the scope of most games. This style of play thrills many players because they enjoy seeing examples of past victories. It doesn't matter if it's getting recognized by a noble they saved, finding a book detailing one of their adventures, or finding statues of themselves in a town they visited long ago for some reason. The world building is a symbolic pillar of roleplay. If done correctly, it can turn a campaign into the stuff of legend. But if players don't want to do anything except stab things, I recommend Warhammer Quest. Then you have the thing that all players love, getting some sweet, sweet spotlight time. Every character will have ambitions they want to accomplish. They might be epic in scope. They might be petty. Power gamers wish to acquire the best magic item that increases their damage. Theater kids want to hunt down a specific entity in their own particular idiom. The coolest players want to quest for immortality eventually. Some might want to rule their kingdom when they reach high levels. Yet others might have something more immediate and personal, like freeing all the house gnome slaves in their high school.
Master has given Petunia fissile materials. Petunia's free.
Time for DMs to start making them earn their happy endings. It's the same as the other pillars. DMs need to add more monsters if the players want more combat. Exploration means they need to be given a reason to start searching. Diplomacy requires the Dungeon Master to provide them with sentient creatures to talk to. World building requires effort into a world to build. Personal advancement means the adventurers will be tilted more towards foes they want to fight than random monsters, leading to treasures they want to find instead of their 5th straight Bohemian ear spoon +1. Not saying don't give out random treasure, but once the party gets their feet under them, start tailing it away from random drops, except for minor encounters and disposable items. Of all the weapons from First Edition I miss that one the most. Just walking down the street and some random Bohemian jumps up and spoons you in the air. The best place you can get ideas for personal advancement is character creation. Their background is an excellent place for adventure ideas for 5th edition. Rescue the sailor's old captain. The urchin's father figure has been arrested for a crime he didn't commit, for once in his life. The scholar might need to find a book for his past mentor. For other editions, look at the backgrounds the players crafted for themselves, rather than as just an extra step in character creation. Do they have a family that they want to protect? Now, don't go fridging a different family member when you need an adventure hook. That's a bit cliche. But if the paladin is sweet on the local barmaid, make an adventure when he finally gets the courage to ask her out. The rest of the party can serve as behind-the-scenes wingmen. Even better if there's a cultural difference or origin between the two. Everybody gets a moment in the sun. But you have to create an adventure that requires the support of the rest of the party. That's the hard part. Players want the big-ticket magic items. You could have them find them in a cave, or better yet, drop clues to each one where they can find the Holy Avenger, the Staff of Power, the Amulet of Pure Good, or the Dagger +1/+5 against puppies. Give the item a name, then give them clues on where to find it. Earned treasure is the best treasure. If you're short on time, make a challenging adventure and reward them with more than one item. Save this trick for higher level play. Superpowered magic items can break your game if awarded too early. Another trick to increasing player immersion is incorporating their backstories and motivations into the campaign. Villains. Give them reoccurring villains to learn to hate. They don't have to be the primary bad guy in each adventure. But if the Iron Ring keeps showing up as nemesis, when the players finally kill their way to the top, they will feel nothing but gratification when they achieve total victory. A hero is only as good as the villain. This applies to D&D as well. The Iron Ring could have kidnapped a player's relative in their youth. Prince de Malapietra has stepped on a lot of toes in his rise to power. Corlin the Lorathian has turned countless fey creatures into elves to support his genocidal war against the Primordials. Putting paid to these blackest villains is the perfect capstone to any campaign. Those are the two missing pillars of RPG play. The more difficult ones are the ones that require actual planning by the DMs to expand on their Game Pass Monster of the Week. Yes, those enforce a meta-plot on the campaign, but it's your meta-plot. It's a game where choices matter, both in character creation and in campaign progress. It gives the players what they want, and if done correctly, at a well-paced progression. So you too can live out your fantasy of being the chosen one. Or never mind.
Time for one of life's harshest lessons, something to remember in every game session, no matter how much the Dark Lord threatens. Never give gnomes a nuclear weapon.